Right. I think we are on the air. So, welcome everyone to episode 11 of Narrations and Lamentations with Mittierim and the Boys. As always, I am Mittierim, and with me are the boys, Skip and Michael.
Hello.
Hi.
So, how are you guys doing right now? Feeling good? Ready to get dwarfy?
Yeah, I'm always trying to get dwarfy.
All right. Well, you guys, uh, anybody have anything particular about the hobby they want to chat about and share what they've been doing? And then we'll go ahead and get into things after that.
Painting.
Oh, yeah, I'm doing some painting.
What you working on?
I'm trying to finish up the couple of those stalkers, and I've been doing some peasants as well. Trying to get up my total to exactly 100 peasants.
100
War.
peasants.
100 peasants, because you can never have too many peasants.
Right.
No.
What about you, Michael? Why don't you share what you've been painting?
Well, I only finished the Dragon Prince the other day, but I'm working on the actual prince, and now I'm finishing out the Dragon Princes.
Okay. And I went on, my wife and kids are at the beach for the week of visiting in-laws, so I spent the last 2 days in like two 16-hour painting stints. So I think I figured about 90+% of my Empire force done, all the painting and cleaning and whatever that I had to do, so that was pretty impressive. I was pretty happy to get that far. Other thing I wanted to talk about a little bit before we get into the meat of tonight's show, while we're kind of waiting for viewers and everything. I started a new video segment on my channel this week called Mittierim Fixes Warhammer. And I focused on the Bretonnian Knights and kind of what I would do to them mechanically to make them mesh with the fluff. I thought it was kind of a cool thing and something that we could do. Apparently that is what the internet has been clamoring for, because I got more views on that video than our last 3 battle reports. So, that's pretty awesome. Thank you guys for showing an interest, if any of you are watching this. So just to give you kind of a heads up, the next one that I'm doing tomorrow, I'm hoping to have it up tomorrow morning, is actually going to kind of attach to this, and I'm going to be handling and fixing the Rune Lords, the Rune Priests, and the Anvil of Doom. So that's pretty cool. And then item 2 that I actually wanted to do a little bit of spoiling. I have seen some pages from the Glotkin book, the new End of Times book, and so I've seen some mechanical stuff, and I wanted to share it because I don't see anybody having talked about it. So first of all, as pretty much everybody expected, they are doing a combined Chaos army, so you can basically play with anything out of beastmen, warriors, or demons. There is not a new magic lore, however. What they have added is that every Chaos wizard, i.e. a wizard from any of those 3 books, now has access to one spell that casts at a 14+ and lets them summon 100 points of demonic keyworded allies. And then for, I wanted to say it's a 20+, you get 200 points. But there's no lore attribute or anything like that that lets you pump it like the undead. But one of the things I wanted specifically to mention to you, Michael, they have new rules for the Beastman Ambush. It works the same way statistically, but now you no longer have to have duplicated units. So you can just
Really?
pick any unit that has the Beastman. Yeah, any unit that has the Beastman ambush rule can now ambush under that. They also have totally changed the way within the narratives of how the demonic instability thing works. There is no more demonic instability. Instead, whenever there is a chaos player playing a game, they get to name whatever chaos god is ascendant. All demons have the unbreakable and unstable rule, except for the demons who are marked of the god that is ascendant. They only have unbreakable.
Really?
So, yeah. So you can just go, oh, I'm Mono Nurgle, and Nurgle's ascendant. We're unbreakable. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Pretty rough.
yeah, way to break the demons, Games Workshop.
Yeah. So, yeah, and there's a bonus to the mortals as well. Oh, that's the other thing about the Beastmen is all of the Beastmen characters and champions get the Eye of the Gods table.
We do?
Yeah.
We're getting rewarded?
And,
Oh my god.
right. And you can also take marks of the 4 gods as if you were Warriors of Chaos. And, God, what was the other thing I saw? Oh, and if your god is ascendant that you are marked to, you can re-roll either of the rolls on the Eye of the Gods table. Either dice.
Oh my god.
So there's
That's
that.
wonderful.
Yeah, and basically you can play from any of the units out of the 3 books. Now, I also saw one of the new figures from that is Karl Franz Ascendant. They're doing basically Karl Franz as an avatar of Sigmar. On Deathclaw, his Griffin as a single model with I think he's got like 10 attacks, 10 wounds, 3 up armor save, craziness.
Jesus.
He gets to basically call down lightning from heaven and blast the shit out of people. Yeah, he's pretty badass. Pretty much sticks up to the Mortarks of Nagash. But so I saw all that today, and somebody spoiled it earlier, and I hadn't seen anybody else talking about it, so I wanted to go ahead and get it out as a special little bump for those who showed up to watch the show early. So don't worry, we're not gonna like totally rail tonight's episode to talk about the new book, but I figured that was worthwhile sharing, particularly since Michael's a Beastman player and would like all that juicy Beastman info that I...
Yeah, that add-on helps make the demon or the Beastmen seem like they're actually a part of chaos.
Yeah. Oh, except, here's the other funny thing. If you roll Demon Prince Ascension, you turn into a Chaos Spawn instead, as a Beastman. Beastmen
Really?
can't actually turn into Demon Princes. Yeah, it was pretty retarded.
Wow.
Rude.
But, okay, so that is enough. I spent about 10 minutes spoiling new stuff, so I think that'll be enough. So, Michael, would you like to tell all our viewers what tonight's topic's going to be?
It's one of my most near and dear. It's the Dwarves.
And, yeah, we knew you were going to be waiting for this one. That's why we wanted to go ahead and get it. Now, to give everybody who's watching kind of an understanding, we're planning on doing one of these type of theme shows for each of the Army books. And for most of the other Army books, I'm trying to line up guest hosts to come on and share their point of view. However, because Michael is such a super fanboy of Dwarves, he's going to count as our guest host tonight. So what we're going to do, apparently everybody and their brother decided to send us questions about the Dwarves. But ideally, what we want to focus on is talking about Dwarves, and we want to kind of rate them in terms of their mechanical ability, their fluff, and how much fun they are to play. And I know with dwarves, at least a couple of those might be contentious points. So, um, let's go ahead, since Michael, this is your house, so so to speak. Um, let's go ahead and hear a little bit about the dwarves from you, as far as terms of what you think about them mechanically, fluff-wise, fun, and your ratings 1 to 10.
Um, Personal feelings, they're the greatest thing in the world, and anybody that says different is a traitor and needs to go get hung over the highway. Uh, Mechanic wise, for the game, they're solid. A lot of their stuff isn't broken. They've got a couple things that are stupid, but I'd probably give them an 8 out of 10 on the mechanics factor. Fluff wise, I like their fluff for the game, but as I've stated before, I've got a strong hatred against the constant dwarves are doomed in everything I play. So their fluff is, I'd say it's at least a solid 7. It would get higher if they weren't constantly, oh, we're gonna die.
All right.
And
And
the
general fun to play.
general fun to play. Um, I know the army so well, so they're a blast for me to play because I can set them down and go, all right, I don't ever have to open my book because I know what everything does, except for the Anvil of Doom because I don't use it that much. But I'd say 9 out of 10, fun to play.
Okay. Skip, would you like to rebut? And I figure we'll get general overviews and then we'll go into some more specifics.
Well, considering I'm the only one of the three of us who did not have a dwarf army, I can only just go playing against them.
Right.
Yeah. Um, they are super fun to play against. I have not been able to figure out really how to beat them. Constantly. Every now and then I do get lucky. But as far as if I see them lining up across the table, I know I'm going to enjoy the battle because it's going to be fun. Fluff-wise, I don't know a whole lot about it except for what I've read now in the End of Times. I haven't really sat down and read the dwarf books. I really can't say some of the background. I do like the fact that they hold grudges. I like the Book of Grudges. I think that's a really cool item. So I don't really want to rate the fluff because I've never really sat down and read it yet. As far as what's in the hardback book. Mechanics wise, I think they're very solid. I think that if you want to do a gun line, you have it. They have solid war machines. They have some good chaff with the gyrocopters and now the gyro bomber. I think they have good, strong core units, and their rare units and everything are pretty cool as well. I like the miners. I like the new Iron Drakes. I think they look really cool, and I think that they play very well as well. So mechanic-wise, I give them about an 8 out of 10. Fun to play, I give them 10 out of 10. I love it. I love playing against them.
Okay, so I guess you guys are going to make me be the jackass of the week again. So,
Yes, that's exactly how we're going to do this.
All right, well, you know what? Challenge accepted, sir. Here it comes.
Mm-hmm.
Mechanically speaking, I think the dwarves have some huge weaknesses. Even with their rune system, they have a weak magic phase, and more to the point, relatively weak magical defense. Or more to the point, maybe not a weak magical defense, but a bipolar magical defense. With the dwarves, you either are going to get your ass kicked by magic, or you're going to totally prevent your opponent from playing with it by multiple spell eatering, rune of balance, that sort of thing. There's not a lot of midway there. 2, I think the lack of distinct troop types hurts the dwarves mechanically. Pretty much all you have in the dwarf army is inventory and war machines. They've got no cavalry. I mean, they've got the gyrocopters, but really, that's a one-trick kind of pony. They have no monstrous cav. They don't have the capability to get a lot of the higher strengths to deal with some of those things that the other races have. And I mean, no monsters, nothing like that. So they do have a few cute tricks, but I think in part because they take some of their most flavorful options and give them kind of bland game mechanics. I think the mechanics side of things is actually where the dwarves are the weakest. So I'm going to give dwarves mechanics a 6. That being said, the fluff is solid. I like the fluff. I think it makes you feel like... See, I'm going to disagree with Michael here, too, in that I like the race on the edge of destruction, because I think it's only with pressure that the true hardiness of the dwarves comes out. On top of that, I think the idea of the dwarf slayer is one of the coolest and most original ideas in fantasy. It's too bad they suck out loud in the game, but the problem is like I was thinking about doing them for my second video on fixing Warhammer. The problem is for the point of that video, there's really nothing to fix on them because they do exactly what the fluff says they're supposed to do. Run out and get murdered by something. So the fluff is solid. If a little overdone at some points. I think the point I'm talking about is like they mention in the Dwarf book, how there is literally no word for forgiveness in their language. And I think that's kind of a hyperbole that probably is not literally true, but it's painted out that way, because I don't see how you could have a society that was actually the case. So because of that kind of tendency to hyperbole, I'm going to give the fluff a 9. As far as fun, I'm going to have to go to split my vote on this one. Fun to play against. Michael, when you play the dwarves, it's a lot of fun to play with you, because it's obviously you love the army, and you like getting aggressive with it. You like playing the melee game. You like playing the infantry game. And realistically, you kind of make your army weaker by doing that, but it's more flavorful and more fun. So playing against, I will give a solid 9 out of 10. Within the window of this group. Playing with... my biggest issue I'm having with the dwarves right now is they're an elite army that has to play like a horde, or like a horde army. And part of the thing I like about the dwarves is that there's so many different options for them, and there are so many different toys that they can play with, but because you need so many bodies to make a group that's even a little bit competitive, that eats up the majority of those points. So... I feel that my army building is very restrictive if I want to play something that's got a dance. So, fun for me. I got to rate it about a 6.
Yeah.
Any agreement, disagreement in those points? We can.
I can agree with the fact that it typically seems like you need to hoard things to make them good. The hammers, for instance, a 20 man of those. Yeah, it's cool, but they'll get eaten before they get to attack. You have to horde mode them to have any hope of doing anything.
Right.
So there's a lot of things in there that you need to have a mass group of to get an effect.
Mm-hmm. So
yeah.
So I guess this leads into Kieran Dunleavy actually asked us a question. And I think this opens the door to it now that we got our overviews, and I want to kind of start this with you guys, since we seem to have very differing views on this. He asks, are the dwarves boring, or is it the people who play them? Or is it scenarios they play or don't play that can give the impression of boringness?
Oh, I would say they're not that boring to play. I mean, for me, I thoroughly enjoy playing them. Never find them boring to put on the table, and I never seem to get the same outcome as I did in game one as I would in game 12. You know, I'm always expecting something different happening in the game with them because something always pops up.
Right.
Um,
But let me ask you this: do
so
you think that that is because of the way that you play them and the fact that you kind of tend to avoid the dwarf gun line bit?
it's probably the way that I play them. I could tell you if I were playing nothing but a dwarf gun line constantly, you guys would not want to play with me because you would
Right.
see, oh, here's three cannons, here's mass group of warriors with shield or great weapons to hold a line, and then thunders and quarrelers, and wouldn't worry about characters. I just worry about dispel. So I would shoot you the entire time while you're coming towards me.
Hmm.
And when you finally got to my line, and that's how the dwarf army is supposed to work, is they're supposed to shoot you, thin you down. But with Warhammer, that mechanic doesn't really work well with the fluff, or the fluff doesn't really work well with the mechanic of how they try to make it. So it ends up being that you don't just thin down the ranks and make it a fun game. You decimate units doing that,
Hmm.
and nobody has fun when they finally get to your line and they've got 10 dudes.
Well, and I think too, it's not even fun for the dwarf player. I mean, I was watching
No,
Anthony from the Sustainable Center just finished his first grand tournament, playing the dwarves, and he even made some comment in the third or fourth game where he was like, "Oh, look how good a general I am! I'm rolling this same artillery dice over and over and over again, and you're just picking up models."
yeah, it gun lines get boring very quickly.
Hmm. Well, and in all fairness, I don't think you've played a whole lot of them. I think last night um, was probably the closest
Yeah,
thing you've ever come to a gun line.
yeah.
And that was what, three war machines and a line
No,
of
it was two war machines, 20 thunderers, and gyrocopter gyro bomber.
and the anvil.
Yeah, and the animal.
So
Which,
you were doing a lot more shooting than you
yeah,
usually do. So let's ask that, since Skip was your opponent that night. What do you think as far as the fun rating, Skip, between his normal style builds and what you played last night?
Well, it was different for both of us because it was the first time that I actually sat down and played the Tomb Kings. So Michael looked at it, and as you know, they're going to be slow. This is a good time to take a modified gun line because it's going to take me a while to get to them. You know, it's the two slowest armies in fantasy playing against each other. You know, I was not prepared for him to take the anvil. He very rarely takes the anvil, so it was fun to see. And if it wasn't for some shenanigans, I would have been done in at the bottom of turn two. The way that the shooting and everything was going, it just
admittedly, those were some fun shenanigans.
they were fun. But and I'm not going to spoil anything. But that game should have well been over by at least turn three. And I just got lucky. Um, it was a little frustrating, but again, it gets down to the point where I'm just still learning the army. I didn't take the right units, what I need to do here, what I need to do there. But as far as playing Michael, I think it was good. It was a good test of what I needed, and he had fun doing it because he hadn't played the Dwarves in a long time. So it was good to see them back across the
Yeah.
table.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one thing we're looking at again when it comes to the strength of the dwarves and me not having the book or anything and knowing a lot about what is in each unit and everything other than what it comes against me. Michael plays to his fluff. I mean, he really does, and you do too. That's why you're not seeing the super hordes and the super gun lines and things like that. So when you look at it from a fluff standpoint and what we're doing in our narrative, I think it boosts the dwarfs up a little bit more in how we're doing that, if that makes any sense, instead of just looking at, okay, are they going to fail if they don't have a bunch of hammers, or if they're going to fail if you take too many miners, or if you don't have any gyrocopters. It's fitting into the fluff, and it's doing exactly what needs to be done, and that's why I rank it a little bit higher than you guys, even when it's fun to play, because it does go with the fluff what we're trying to do. Now, competitive wise, I see your points. I think that if in a grand tournament, you're gonna be forced to go one way or the other. You're gonna have to either go gun line or something super strong that's gonna sit there and castle. You're just gonna. I can see where it would get frustrating, but I think for the fluff, I think they do very, very well, at least for us.
And that makes sense. I mean, one of the other questions that was part of both this that Kieran asked, as well as another question we had earlier, or that got asked earlier, is whether the scenarios can encourage that fun play. And I think in a lot of ways we should consider sort of the fluffiness of our campaign kind of scenario building. So I think it's pretty obvious that when you change the scenario or change the ultimate aim of a particular game, what can be fun or not definitely can change as well. So I think there's a pretty emphatic yes from all three of us that scenarios can be adapted and different playstyles can be adapted to make the dwarves more fun than they're necessarily stereotypically portrayed as being.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
So bringing in the fluff, since Skip opened that door, let's go on ahead with the next question as well. What is your favorite thing from the dwarf fluff?
My favorite thing. I can't name the entire book, right?
No, pick one thing, please.
Fluff wise, and I know it's a terrible, terrible mechanical blunder, but I love the Anvil of Doom fluff. I like the idea that they empowered an anvil and went, we're gonna make magic our way, and just literally bend it to their will. Because there's nothing more dwarf than taking something that's non-dwarven and going, this is mine now.
Right. Strangely enough, I think my favorite bit of the fluff is also another thing that's just mechanically terrible. I love the Slayers. I think the idea of the Slayer's Oath is amazing. Like, I really enjoy the idea that they're like, you know what? We violated what we hold to. We have given up, broken trust with something, broken an oath, and so for that, the only salve is death. And so, yeah, I was just very happy to see that because it's unique. I mean, you don't really get that kind of thing elsewhere.
Yeah.
So, Skip.
Just what I know, again, I'm not reading the book. I like the Longbeards. I like the fact that they're gruff, they're old, they're set in their ways, and they're like, all right, you young whippersnappers, this is how you do it. Grab this big thing and that's what I like. That's the unit that I've enjoyed playing against the most.
Get off my mountain, you damn kids!
You damn whippersnappers!
Okay, so, my wife has actually volunteered a question, which was an unusual amount of wanting to contribute to this show, so applause for her. And this question is for Michael. Why is Michael, who would willingly have dwarf beard babies if he could, now wussing out to play high elves?
I was truly wondering for the first 5 minutes when I saw that in the text up there of who could have written that. And as soon as you said that she had a question for me, I realized who that was from.
Well, you still have to answer the question.
Oh my god. Cavalry. And we don't have that many other armies to choose from that nobody else has. And I didn't want to ride cold ones. That's
right.
There's my answer.
All right, so let's go because I think we're going to get into a couple of arguments here in the next few questions. So let's actually bounce out to the comments for tonight's show and see because they're already lighting the board up out there. So we got our number 1 and number 2 fans fighting for massive amounts of content here. Dark CT is popping in, totally losing his mind about me spoiling the new book stuff, which is pretty awesome. He's apparently very happy about the Beastman buffs. But he actually asks a question in his third, I think it's his third comment here, about the fluff, Michael. What would you change in particular if you were going to change something about the dwarves to stop them from being a doomed race in the fluff?
You know, I would almost just a generalized looking for the light in the tunnel kind of thing. Where, yeah, we're having really bad time, we're getting beat down, but there's still that we can get to the end of this tunnel and not the generalized overfill of we're gonna die, but everybody else is gonna die too.
So you just want kind of a mental shift?
Hope. Yeah, just it doesn't have to be a big shift, just kind of a slight, hey, we're not all dead, let's, get up and do something over, let's sit in our strongholds and pout because we're upset.
Mm-hmm. I tell you, what I think I would change, because again, I agree with you, I don't think it needs much if you did want to change it from that. I think they need one decent, significant victory.
Yeah.
And here's how I would do it. Since you get people bitching and moaning about the Chaos Dwarves and how they're not a real army and you want to just give them the squat treatment, I think they should finally bring that conflict of the Chaos Dwarves to the real against the real dwarves to a head and let the real dwarves extinguish the Chaos Dwarves.
Yeah, and that would definitely add a bit of a brighter side to the dwarves.
Yeah, I mean, because really the big problem is every enemy that they are portrayed as fighting against outbreeds them, outnumbers them, and is everywhere. The Chaos Dwarves should theoretically be on about the same tier as far as breeding goes. There should be about the same number of them. Let them throw down in a big old messy civil war and let the dwarves come out on top. And just to show, you know what, the dwarves can solve problems. It's not that they're just going to get worn down and worn down and worn down.
Right. Yeah, I agree. They need one solid victory.
And I don't think they can really get that victory from anybody but the Chaos Dwarves because,
yeah,
like I said, the cards are kind of stacked against them for all their enemies. Any thoughts out of you, Skip?
I think I agree. I mean, I go by what you guys talk about during the games and everything with the fluff wise, but that would go very well to kind of bring them out of their depressed mode. The gloom and doom. The best way to do that is to have good things happen to you consistently, and to do that, if you have a victory like that, that would propel them into a different direction and maybe, just maybe, cheer them up a little bit. Because there was a happy dwarf, wasn't there? There's happy, Doc, Dopey, Sneezy. So, there's happy.
Right? So, when I see you Sunday, I'm going to strangle you. You know that, right?
I'll spray my river of light. I'll be all right.
Oh, no rivers. No rivers. No rivers.
Too soon, dude. Too soon.
Sorry.
All right, so, and then not to be outdone, Vince Venturella posted 3 or 4 different posts, so he and Dark CT are definitely fighting for content here. Apparently Vince is correcting me slightly on my spoilers. He says apparently the change for demonic instability is only when you use a combined army. So in a normal demon army, you still use your normal rules. And if you use the combined army, the demons actually get worse because they go unbreakable and unstable. And the ascendant thing is only when you're using rules in the scenario. I would argue that point because I read that specifically. It's set up just like the Nagash stuff, where it's like these rules are used in the scenarios, but feel free to use them in any game that you want. So I don't know that they're just limited to the scenarios, and it does specifically talk about that the scenarios that the Ascendant God can change, but it doesn't specify how. So I'll give that. Realistically, it gives the option for demons to either be much worse or much better, depending upon how you choose to play the game. So, but more to the point of what we're talking about on our dwarf side, I don't remember who used the word decimate, but he is calling us on our grammar that decimate means to reduce by 10%. I don't remember who used that, whether it was me or one of you guys.
Who cares?
It's yeah. It's all right. He is correcting our denotative meanings. I was using it in a connotative sense, which still makes me correct. If it was me. If it were you guys, you're on your own.
I'm always right about everything. I'm a dwarf. I'm stubborn.
Right. Okay. So, and he says the issue actually is something to be said for the psychographic profile of dwarf players. They're not a toolbox army like the Empire or Skaven. They tend to have a plan, and it suits people who have a plan, who start the game and execute that plan. Doesn't mean those people can't react, and he's not making any sort of judgment. Just means that it suits someone who likes to know exactly what they want to do and be able to do it no matter what comes at them. So by that definition, it can lead to a more quote-unquote boring game as they're executing Plan A almost regardless of what's going on. It's not true for all, but he seems to think that it applies to the majority. So what do you think about that, Michael? Are you a Plan A kind of guy?
If Plan A involves kill the other army, then yeah. That's what I said. I set the dwarves on the board, and that's what I plan to do. I'm going to kill those dudes. And what happens in between is what happens in between.
Okay. I do think that they are a relatively forgiving army. I mean, they're high toughness across the board, high weapon skill. You don't really have enough movement to screw yourself up in the movement phase. So, I mean, it's not like you're running way off onto a link and not doing anything. You're kind of there. And really, once you learn how to use the rune system and the hammers or the workings, they're pretty forgiving, all things considered. Of course, this is the guy who routinely blows up cannons that are rune of forging. But
I don't know how anybody does that.
I don't either.
That's impressive.
So, another thing I want to deal with before we get back into the dwarves. I don't think either of you guys saw it, but today on Lord Tremendous's channel, he and Death Holy Death set fire to a fully painted model of Nagash. They doused the damn thing in lighter fluid and melted it to a greasy stain on the sidewalk. What's your opinions of that?
I wish I had the money so I could just piss away a Nagash model.
Tremendous did go out on a limb and say that it was Death Holy Death's money, so I don't think he would have done it either.
Because that's a lot of money for a single model, fully painted too.
Yeah. I do have to say, I thought it was awesome to watch the damn thing burn, but it did show me how fragile that model is.
Really?
Now it's being held up just by the spirit host things. They douse the thing in lighter fluid. Death Holy Death sparks it with his lighter, and the thing's not on fire for 3 seconds before Nagash just falls over. And then he just kind of starts to melt. But
awesome.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
You also need to go on and check the end of that because he punishes his dice, and you need to see that. he picked out 7 of the worst offenders, put them on the ashes of Nagash, doused them in lighter fluid, and melted while the others were forced to sit there and watch.
Oh,
It may have been one of the coolest things I've ever seen all week. So,
that's amazing.
yeah, it was pretty awesome. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of get y'all's opinion on that because it was strange, but it was awesome all at the same time. So you got to go see the. I think it's the one he posted today. It was Toon Kings versus Dark Elves, and he melts Nagash like halfway through it, and then melts the dice at the end. So it's pretty awesome.
Ah, that's great.
So here is a couple of questions that I think Mitch MC1 Gamer asked, and sorry, I forgot who this first person that asked was because I'm just cutting and pasting all of these questions. I think it's Tom Ham asking about the dwarves and their super expensive non-magical weapons, specifically the crossbow and the dwarf handgun, costing 4 points a model, basically. And Mitch asked what our preferences were, Quarreler versus Thunderer. So let's go ahead and just open the discussion to dwarf ranged weapons, their costs and preferences. Go, Michael.
Okay, so let's go ahead and put it out there that proper dwarven weaponry is not cheap. Dwarves have to produce that stuff. 4 points? Those guys are cutting those costs really close to just running out of business.
So what, are they catching like a 10% off top for the points, or
Oh
what
no,
is that?
they're probably selling at cost plus a percent. I would spend 16 points for Thunderers, frankly.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Strength 4
See?
armor piercing can do some work. Now I'd also ask if they were going to be 16 points to be a higher ballistic skill. But
Now,
I mean,
Go ahead, Skip. What?
so being on the outside of this, I'm going to say, and this is going to be a perfect argument because Michael takes Thunderers and Josh likes Quarrelers. They have gone. This discussion has gone back and forth since Michael came back and rejoined the narrative. So I'm interested to see how this is going to pan out between the two because this, guys, behind the scenes is an ongoing argument.
Now, for me, I got to go Quarrelers, and I think, given the ballistic skill, you want the maximum number of rounds of shooting. So that extra 6 inches makes a big difference, particularly when you're thinking about long-range penalties. I think, and for most of what you're going to be shooting at with Thunderers and Quarrelers, you're not really going to be pumping it into the high armor targets. You're going to be pumping it into chaff. You're going to be pumping it into small units, stuff like that. So I think the extra range totally outweighs the shorter range armor pierce.
right, and I will raise you that handguns are badass and quarrelers are just they're old school. Nobody wants those.
All right, well then I'm going to throw this back in your face. Because you're a dwarf and you honor age, the quarreler, the crossbow is the older weapon and therefore should get more respect than the younger beardling handgun.
I will then raise you that I'm a dwarf and I don't believe in ranged weapons at all, and therefore both of them are horrible. But I'll take the one that shoots black powder.
All right, I'm having a hard time going with that line of logic, but we'll give that to you.
I'm a dwarf. I can't be wrong.
You wouldn't admit it even if you were.
Yeah.
Of course, you got to understand, though. I mean, he and I have gone around and around and around on this, mainly because I have an unusual fear of black powder. because I attract misfires like nobody's business. Just an example, I played with a steam tank for the first time in forever last night. In 6 turns of the damn game, I misfired with the thing 4 times.
Oh, that was fun. It
It
still didn't
was
kill Sir
ridiculous.
Reginald.
But I blow up runed cannons like every other game. I mean,
Yeah,
I still have yet to fire my flame cannon, I don't think, and have it actually hit anything.
and I don't
It
think
either
I've.
misfires or blows up or just
Yeah,
goes short. I mean, it's terrible. Anything with gunpowder in it is just my antithesis. That's why I like my quarrelers and my bolt throwers and my grudge thrower for the dwarves.
yeah.
Anything that doesn't have me dealing with fucking black powder.
Well, and on the opposite scale, Black Powder seems to love me. My
Right.
cannonballs bounce over ogres and hit a demon prince 2 inches behind them.
Yeah. Of course, this is also the same douchebag who's rolling 12 dice for his magic phase while playing the dwarves. Oh my god. I sit here and struggle with every magic using army I get to get a 6. And he's like, 12 dice? Oh, that's too many dice. I only wanted 5. I'm like, shut the hell up. Oh. I'm just, next time we play, it's going to be nothing but rivers of light as far as the eye can see. It'll be 12
I don't want Rivers of Light.
12
I'm telling
pieces
you.
of terrain, and they're all rivers of light.
All my skeleton archers grabbed a bucket full on their way back out of the dwarves realm last night. So
Oh my god, that river was awful.
All right, so I think we're going to have to agree to disagree on which is better.
Alright, we'll table this for now.
However, I do kind of agree that they're both a little overcosted.
Yeah.
I think they would probably be better at like 10 points a pop. So it'd basically be the Dwarf Warriors +2. Does that sound right to you, Michael?
Yeah, I could see it at that. I mean, let me check my point costs real quick. I mean, if you look, they are actually, if Games Workshop went with how many points they are for characters taking, they're undercosted. Because they're 6 points for
Oh, yeah.
anybody to take them. So they're undercosted, considering that you go, here's a Dwarf Warrior, you equip them with a handgun, 6 points. That'd be 14.
Yeah, I guess that. So our fans are stepping in on the quarreler argument, so let's go ahead and get on that. So Dark CT sides with me on the quarrelers. He says he likes the range and the access to the two-handed weapons. We actually talked about that, as that is another difference, is only the quarrelers can have the two-handed weapons. I like that, and I try and use it, but I tell you, it doesn't tend to work all that well. Because you're realistically not taking gigantic units of quarrelers. Because, I mean, you've got to keep them in 2 ranks to get good firing out of them. And unless you're going to spread it like 10 wide and 2 deep and take up a ridiculous amount of space, there's usually not enough great weapon wielders to really do much against anything that's going to be of significance. So while I do take advantage of that, I don't necessarily think that that's the thing that pushes them into clearly being better.
Yeah. And, at that point, because Great Weapons are 2 points for them, I'm pretty sure you can get Rangers for that. Yeah.
14 point probably.
Yeah, you can get Rangers over Quarrelers at that point, who come equipped with a great weapon.
Right. And so he says, but really he thinks they only keep them as separate entities to give more core units, and he wants to know if there's any difference between the stats of Thunderous Quarrelers and Base Warriors so that they could list them as one. And I will answer that it doesn't matter. Because it's not the stats that are keeping them apart. It's the bullheaded arguments like the one we're having right here that prevents them from being the same entry.
Yes.
It is dwarven nature that keeps them apart.
Yes. Because one
So,
believes that their handguns are better, the other one believes their crossbows are better.
so where do the
Right.
Iron Drakes come into this?
They're a
They're
weird
rare,
unit I don't
man.
touch.
But they have shooting. So what about
They
the
They
do.
Drake gun?
basically carry around miniature flame cannons.
Yeah. Okay. Let's actually. That's a good point, Skip. Let's get into the discussion on the Iron Drakes, because I think you and I have had two different results with them, as they don't seem to be very good for you.
No. That's
So if you want to talk a little bit about your opinions
that
on.
is the only black powder device that I have in an army for the dwarves that has done terrible for me consistently. I have not had them come up in a game. I mean, I've played them 2, 3 times. Every time they've either been on the wrong area or they get run over in a turn.
Mhm.
They're just
I, on the other hand, have had some good luck with them, but the problem is that you got to understand they're going to be an expensive unit, because really to get the most out of them, you need like 20 of them in a 10 by
uh,
2 with Rune of Slowness. So I mean that's going to be an expensive unit, because what you need to do is you need to basically move them up so that you're just within range and just start shooting. As your opponent gets closer, you back up and shoot, because they've got quick to fire, so they can still move, still shoot. You stand and shoot when they charge. Hopefully they fail the charge from stand and shoot. You back up again, and the idea is they're a kiting unit.
yeah.
You're supposed to let your opponent get just within range and then just slowly kite them across the field. Problem with that is that there's a limit to the number of opponents who are going to be dumb enough to let you get away with that if you give them any other option. But I mean, I think the freaking Strength 5 fire blasts are.
Oh yeah, no, it's
I mean,
amazing.
they're hard. they're hard to say no to.
They
Yeah,
do
no,
get
they're
us.
amazing. It's just they've done horrible for me.
Yeah, I do have to say though, the big thing that miffs me about them is that they won't share their armor with characters.
Yeah, that's so bizarre.
I mean, I would think if a dwarf lord walked up to an Iron Drake and was like, "Strip, bitch, I'm taking your armor," then they would give it up to him. But apparently that is not the case. They like their armor more than their loyalty to their dwarf lord.
Of course, we're talking about armor and weapons from the dwarves.
Right.
That's all we care about.
Wow.
Yeah. But I think to answer your question, Skip, I think they're kind of a different thing. I mean, they don't fit the same use in the army. I mean, I don't think you'd ever see somebody, mainly because of the lack of being able to move and shoot. But I don't think you'd see anybody trying to do the same thing with hammers or quarrelers that they would try to do with the Iron Drakes. All right, so here's another question for Mitch. It's going to be another sort of weapon discussion, since that seems to be the center of all dwarf talk. Um, Thoughts on equipment for longbeards, either great weapons or weapon and shield.
Um, Depends what I'm taking them for. I typically equip them shield because I take hammers.
Mhm.
If I were doing just 2 units of longbeards, it would be one with shields, one with great weapons.
Mhm. See, and interestingly enough, I do the opposite, because I take iron breakers instead of hammers. I go great weapons on the
Yeah,
longbeards and weapon and shield on the iron breakers. Um, you're probably right
yeah.
that the
So it's
warriors are.
it's
Yeah, probably right that points value wise, the warriors are better to go with great weapons, and the longbeard should go for defense. But I'm very rarely looking at just my core when I make that decision. I'm looking at whatever I've
yeah.
chosen for my special infantry too.
Yeah, you got to look at what you're building for your entire army, depending on what you're gonna equip them with.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you've got 20 longbeards and 20 hammers, there's no reason to have those 20 longbeards go great weapon.
Right. So, uh, Bugmans and Rangers, are they worth it?
The old book, yeah, they could decimate an army by themselves.
So you mean knock it down by
Now,
10%?
yeah,
um, I oh sorry. Go. What are your thoughts about with the new book?
with the new book, Bugman still, I mean, I like Bugman. His fluff is fantastic. The idea that they burnt his brewery down, and so now he's been on a manhunt for killing everything because he's drunk, that's awesome. The fact that I have to pay a shit ton of points to make his dudes 17 points a model to make them Bugman's Rangers, I don't like.
So speaking of Bugmans, I have to stick in another little comment here. This week, I showed Michael some pictures and some videos from Warhammer World and the Bugman's bar in there, and I swear he almost cried.
It's a thing of beauty. It is a thing of beauty.
I think he's already working on planning some sort of religious pilgrimage to Bugman's bar.
Oh yeah.
All right, so my opinion on the Rangers, if you're going to use them in 5-man little weapon teams, scout them out and send them after war machines or soft targets. They're really not worth anything else. They're a good chaff unit because you can put them wherever the hell you want them. And they're what, 60 points for a unit of 5 of them? It's something a little like that.
14,
70.
28.
70 points.
Yeah.
Okay, 70 points for a unit of 5 of them.
Would
So
you
I mean
Right,
that's with it well within what?
I was going to say, do you equip them with crossbows or throwing axes?
They're automatically equipped.
They automatically have it all.
Which is why you don't. Which is why making quarrelers with great weapons is kind of a moot point, because unless you're trying to make core, Rangers do the same exact thing,
Yeah,
and they get scouting.
right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say use them as small chaff units. Use them to put some pressure on a weak flank, something like that. But you really don't want them in any groups bigger than 5. They're
Yeah.
too big a point sink, and they're typically with the scout. They're going to be too far away from any sort of support. So I just don't think they're worth it beyond that.
Well, that's
Um,
why the old Rangers work so much better.
right. So best use of hammers. I think this is very simple. Obviously, the best use of hammers is to be a very pretty decoration on your shelf of shit you don't use in an army. Um, they die too quick. Yeah, they pack a punch, but it has to be the perfect punch at the perfect time for them to work. Otherwise, they're going to die on useless shit. And because the dwarves don't have the movement necessary, you don't get to control what they go into, really. Your enemy is going to be much more likely to control that than you are. I say leave them the hell at home, bring the Iron Breakers instead.
Right. I would say they are not a pretty decoration. They are awesome looking, and they are the definition of what I imagine dwarves to be. Heavy armor, giant hammer, stubborn, and will beat the living hell out of anything that comes close to them.
And once again, I better interject because this is the biggest ongoing argument between the two dwarf players here.
Hammers are the greatest. They are my bread and butter. I love those things.
Mm-hmm. And the problem is I don't even have like as much of a love for the Iron Breakers as Michael does for the hammers. I just realized that the Iron Breakers statistically are a better unit, particularly if you're going to put a Dwarf Lord on Shield Bearers in it, because that way you can bring you're not losing as much offensive power, putting a Dwarf Lord there in Ironbreakers as you are in Hammerers. I mean, and that's just the way it is.
And this is why they'll never work for you, Josh, because you don't have faith in them. You must believe in the hammers, and they will reward you.
I don't think so. I think I've got more faith in the Chaos Gods. I'll stick with demons.
I don't know. Some of those rolls you've made on the magic table have really just not done good for
Well,
you.
I told you that is not the demon's fault. That is my fault for not taking the goddamn book that lets me reroll.
Well, you remember Skip's run with him? He's the only player with the demons that hit anything with Corn's
Oh my
fireballs.
god, that is so retarded. So the last ogre versus demon game we played for the narrative, Skip sat in and took over the demon army, and in the span of a single game, did more damage with the Reign of Chaos table than I have in the entirety of the time I've played with the demons. It was so retarded.
It was hilarious to watch.
It was
pretty
painful,
funny.
dude. It hurt. My demons and I had a long talk after you left. I was like, they were just screwing with me. That was the problem. So, his next question is about paint schemes. How do you feel a dwarf army should look color-wise? Not the war machine, but the actual dwarves. And I think we've got another big difference on this one, too. So you go ahead with this one first.
I'm kind of mixed on it. I really like the idea of my individual units. Well, my individual types of units. Like I've got my war machine crews, my range guys, and my combat guys. And so I try and keep them in a very specific type color scheme. My range guys are painted in reds, my combat dudes are painted in greens, and my war machines are painted in grays. So that I've got, for the dwarves, and my mindset is, we've got, if I was looking out on a huge battle, I would know where divisions were. So I feel like it makes them a little more militarized when I do that. But I also like the idea of just having nothing but a solid sheet of one color armor going across your army and marching that in a forward line, so it's like a sea of just dwarves.
See, for me, I like some variation. I've actually tied mine into the fluff. There are 3 primary families that make up the Hammerfell clan, and so each one of them has their own color and their own uniforms. So you've got the blue for the Hammerfells, you've got the green for the Grunwalds, and then I've got the red, which were originally going to be the Hammers, but then I wised up and realized they were garbage and made them long beards. But so for me, I like very simple colors for the dwarves. Not quite primary colors, but I mean it's green, blue, red. Then you get the subtlety, I think, in them in the metals that you pair with that. Because with each of mine, I have a different shade of metal, brass, gold, silver, whatever you want, that kind of ties it all together. So I like different colors.
Well,
Go ahead.
I see where you're going with that, because my hammers are my most, fluff-wise, my most elite, and they're covered in gold. My longbeards, on the other hand, they've got gold on them, but they're mainly silvers. And then my Thunderers have some gold in their beard, but no other gold on them.
Right.
So
they just don't get paid as well.
Well, it's more that if my hammers are going to sit there and be like, yeah, we're going to stand around the king and die before he does, that they should probably get a little bit more change.
Right. So, alternatives for gyrocopter models. Any thoughts? He says he wants to do a 6 gyrocopter, 1 bomber list, but it comes out to about $400, and he doesn't want to pay for it.
Where do you fit the hammers if you're putting all these points in gyrocopters?
Yeah, I would never recommend somebody taking a 6 gyrocopter list. They're just it's too many points away from the important stuff out of your army.
Yeah.
Um, as far as the gyrocopter models, I actually like I have one of each of the last 3 gyrocopter models. Because there's one gyrocopter in my armies tied to each of the 3 clans. Um, but I would say eBay, man. There's
Yeah.
plenty of, if you're not necessarily wanting the brand new one, go eBay. You can find them for $10, $20, something like that.
Yeah.
It's no big deal. Um, so I'm frankly, all this discussion of numbers and tactics is getting tedious to me, so I'm going to jump over his next question and go to one that's more fun. Favorite special character in the dwarf book and why?
Oh. My most favorite is Ungrim Iron Fist.
The Slayer King?
Oh yeah, because that is the most badass dwarf in existence. He's got everything going for him. He's a slayer. He's a king. He beats up other characters from other armies and goes for like the ogre king. He beat up and was like, "And now I release you because it's gonna be more fun to hunt you." He
That
is.
wasn't an that wasn't an ogre king. That was just the freaking man eater.
I swore he took. No, you're right. It says Golfag Manny.
Yeah,
Who am I
Golfag
thinking?
man eater. No, you're just confused because Golfag is the only named ogre that anyone gives a damn about.
Who's the guy who rides on top of all the Noblards?
Greasus Gold
Oh,
Tooth.
Greasus. If you guys could use less G's for names, I would be thankful for that.
It's all right. I'm hoping that Greasus dies soon and we won't have to worry about him anymore. So
But either way, so he beats up an ogre character and releases him because it's more fun to chase him down.
right. Um, I don't know that Skip. Do you know any of the special characters, Skip?
If I had to choose one, just of what I know, I would have to go with Bugman because I mean, guy's pissed off that his brew house burned down. You know, that's
I
that's that's worth
Bugman.
some grudges. Yeah.
I have to give love for Thoric Ironbrow just because he was tough enough to not commit suicide after his anvil became terrible.
Yeah, he that takes some cojones.
I think he was awesome, like back when the anvil was awesome.
Oh yeah, no, in
Um,
the last edition, he was he was borderline broken.
right. But fluff wise, I like the fact that he's out there hunting for the history of the dwarves, where everyone else is just willing to go down swinging and killing things. He seems to be the one dwarf who's focused on reclaiming that which they lost. And I think up until the point, obviously, where they killed his ass off in the end times, he really was the closest to a hopeful character the dwarves had.
Yeah, I'm still gonna pray that he's brought back. I don't know how, but there's got to be a way.
Only as a vampire dwarf.
And now I know how he comes back.
Oh Jesus, what?
We get golems, and he's made into the first golem. That's right. Yep.
Oh boy.
Yep. That's how that.
No,
That's how that works. Yes.
no golems.
I want golems.
I want goat riders.
I don't want them on goats at all. I want them on bears. But you know what? If we get Cav, I don't care what it is.
Just make them riding other dwarves. Just put
I
a
don't
saddle.
yeah. It's just no.
All
It'll just
right.
be an entire
So
unit
okay,
of shield bearers,
What?
all right, let me ask you a very important question, Michael.
right?
If they propose to you and decide and let you make the decision, we will give you cavalry at the cost of your hammerers. What decision?
No,
Nope.
no.
would pass
You
on
keep gang
cavalry.
cavalry. The cav can go fuck themselves.
Wow,
Okay,
you are one deluded dude.
All right, here's a
I'm
question.
not get my hammers up.
Why does the Empire, which is supposedly second to the Dwarves in technology, why do they have a mechanical horse and the Dwarves don't? Why won't the Dwarves just build mechanical horses for their cavalry?
Because that shit blows up.
Yeah, well, because if you actually look at the Empire mechanical horse, it's not perfected. They wind down. And that's the thing is there's a character in what's his name, Borikson, the engineer.
Yeah, Grim Buxton.
Yeah, Grim Burlickson, that kind of explains all that. He's like this kind of wacky, mad inventor dude, and his story kind of explains that it's not that the dwarves don't come up with cool shit like that, but that the dwarf clan masters and the kings and everything essentially prevent them from proliferating it because it's not accepted technology. And so it kind of plays out this idea that the dwarves could have better tech than the Empire if their sort of controlling engineers would just loosen up a bit.
Yeah, that's not gonna happen. They're dwarves.
Yeah. Again, that's
They're set in their ways.
But the problem is that's where I think it goes to hyperbole though. Is they're so set in their ways that it's going to fucking get their race killed. You would think somebody would wake the hell up and just be like, oh, you know what? Having Gatling gun mounted tanks might be useful. And since the Empire idiots can do it even if it blows up 6 times a day, you think we could put it together in half the time and yeah.
Make it 100 times better with ruse?
Right.
Yeah, they probably could.
But,
oh, here, let me put ruse forging on this thing.
Well, maybe they should talk to the guy.
But the only reason... What?
I was about to say, maybe they should talk to the guy who's in charge of the Blood Bowl football team, because they've got those lawnmowers that can run over people in Blood Bowl. Why don't you have it on the field in battle?
Well, hell, 3 editions ago they had that machine that had all the axes, and it was it was a goblin hewer or something, I think it was called.
Yeah.
Like, where the hell did that thing go? That would be awesome. But I think that as the game got older and wanted to go for this kind of grimmer idea, I mean, hell, even if you look at the Chaos Dwarves, I mean, you look at all their fucking equipment. I mean, they've got machines that put just about anything the dwarves do to shame.
Yeah.
Mm.
So, I don't know. It's one of those things. It's just like, how do you say that it's okay for their hard-headedness to essentially doom their whole race? And that's where I think that the fluff gets a little stupid.
Yeah. It does have a little bit of downside there.
Yeah. All right, guys. So we've had a chance to discuss and hash it out. We've been talking for about an hour and 15 minutes so far. Has anybody's opinions changed from the ratings they gave at the beginning of this?
Nope.
Awesome, and that makes us
fun.
real dwarves.
Yeah. I've recruited you all to the Dwarven Way.
Right. So, all right. So I guess that's where we're gonna wrap it up. Couple of other things. I'm hopefully going to reach out to Anthony from the Sustainable Center sometime this week and see if next week our topic can't be Bretonia, and get him on. He said he was interested in doing it with us, so that's what we're thinking about. I don't think a whole lot of people saw the video I posted for the contest. So just a reminder, we are doing a contest to win one of my wife's hand-done banners specifically for your army. We haven't gotten a lot of entries in yet, so what I've decided, since last weekend was kind of a tight weekend for everybody with all the GTs going on, we're actually going to extend that contest. It was originally going to end on the 4th, which is this coming Tuesday. I'm actually going to extend it to the 11th. So please go check that video out and send your entries in to me by the 11th so they can be considered. The 3 finalists will be announced on the episode that occurs on Well. So please get those in. We're looking for a lot of participation. So it should be a lot of fun. And my wife's going to make a badass banner for somebody. So any final thoughts, gentlemen?
The dwarves are the greatest. Everybody else sucks.
All right. Then why are you playing the knife ears?
Because I want a cav. And I'm not sacrificing my hammers for it.
Well, speaking of Cav, I mean, we need to talk about the best army for Cav that's out there. That's Bretonia. Even though we don't have one-up saves or any chickens to ride or anything like that, but we're still the #1 cavalry army in Warhammer.
So
Skip.
you guys are going to make me be the jackass of the week next week, aren't you? Again.
No, I'm going to talk about how bad the Bretonians are compared to the elves when it goes to
Okay.
Dragon Princess who
Awesome.
gets 6-up ward and I don't got to pray for shit.
Awesome. Then we volunteer you to be the jackass of the week next week. Of
I'm
course,
up for it.
of course, if Anthony comes, I think he's going to show us how it's really done. So, just kidding, Anthony. Got nothing but love for you, man. So, all right, guys. Well, thank you for watching yet another episode. This is episode 11 in the can. And we will see you next time. Bye-bye.
Later.